Welcome to the Beyond Divorce Embracing Change podcast. My name is Michael Flores, and I will be your host while we explore the complex journey of divorce with empathy, insight, and practical knowledge. Whether you're contemplating separation, in a divorce, or looking for support post-divorce, our episodes provide expert guidance, stories, and strategies to help you through every step of the process. We are actual therapists, helping clients who sit on our couches every day through their difficulties of divorce. You are not alone. Join us as we delve in and find solutions that give you hope again. We're glad you're here.
This podcast is not intended to replace legal or personal help. This podcast is for informational purposes only.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome back. Real treat for you today. We have Dr. Jacobie Robinson with us, who's going to be talking about a really an important topic. And I'll be honest with you. I would like to say I'm not surprised, but I was real surprised. You heard an episode earlier with Janan, or maybe you'll hear this later, this episode, but Janan talks about being honest. And this is actually something that we have found when people get real raw with us and honest. This is a topic that comes up, and what an important topic to bring back to you, which is sex with my ex. So the title of this episode is Sex with My Ex. And I'm just so honored to have Dr. Robinson here to go over this topic. I think he's the best person for it with all his training and his background. And I hope he'll recap and share with you all a little bit about how why he is the best person probably to talk about this for you all to hear about. So please subscribe to our podcast. Make sure you get all the latest episodes. As I said on another episode, we're trying to tie these together as they go through every single aspect. We're going to try to capture every aspect of the divorce process so that each thing that people experience, they have a little bit of information of how to navigate. So welcome, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Michael. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing super well. I'm so glad you're here on this topic. I think this is a topic that is probably one of those that people kind of keep as a taboo. Like, I don't want to talk about that. But we know it comes up.
Yeah.
We know that people that are divorced, even in the process of divorce, have been divorced, they're still hooking up.
Well, of course. See, first of all, I think it's important for us to understand that divorce is taboo and sex is taboo.
So we have two going at it.
So we have two, we have a double whammy here, right?
Yeah.
You know, people don't really want to talk about divorce. I kid you not, I'm remembering and recalling a moment where a relative of mine was telling me, we were in conversation and she was telling me about her divorce.
Right.
And whenever she would use the word divorce, she would say, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And then divorce. And then like she couldn't hardly say it.
She couldn't say it.
She couldn't hardly say it. Like she
but
had
to the family.
To the family member, and she would whisper the word divorce.
As if it was a bad word.
As if it was a bad word.
Yeah.
And the same, even with sex, we see that oftentimes people don't even say sex. They'll say things like, oh, they're doing it. Ooh, then they're making noise.
And they're making noise.
Or,
it's like a shame thing or
like
something.
It's a shame-based thing.
Right.
Right. And so my hope, in this conversation today, Michael, is that number one is that people will own their sexuality, that they will own it and embrace it and discover how to cultivate healthy sexuality, healthy sexual expression. And then we'll specifically talk about, of course, sex with my ex and what that is and what that means and what that looks like, right?
Absolutely. So I said earlier, I was hoping you could explain, and so I'll ask, could you explain what makes you the guy for this topic?
Well, I think one of the reasons why I like this topic so much is because as I did my own personal work, not just my professional work as well, but my own personal work, I made a discovery. I identified my top 3 pleasures. And the reason why I did that is because I noticed that many of us get caught up in traps because our top 3 pleasures become our top 3 priorities.
Wow.
Right. And so in an effort to cultivate a sense of sanity in my decision making and in my behavior, I identified my top 3 pleasures. And so my top 3 pleasures were food, sex, and TV.
There it is.
Not necessarily in that order, right? And so, so when I was working on my PhD, I thought, because I like to think, and I like to talk. I don't necessarily like to write.
Mm.
I don't necessarily like to research. I don't like to do all that stuff. And so if I needed to do something that was going to motivate me, I needed to do something on a topic that I like.
Yep.
And so I did mine on sex.
Wow.
But particularly on a topic because of my passion for men, and that I saw that men were struggling with an expression of healthy sexuality, especially married men.
Right.
I did a topic. My dissertation was on using Satir's human validation process model to help African American men, heterosexual African American men who are addicted to online pornography,
Wow.
to regain their identity and sexual satisfaction in marriage.
Oh my gosh, that's so specific. Like,
It is so specific. It's a very long title, but when you're working on a PhD, you want your research to be very specific,
oh, absolutely.
right? And so, so it's not one of those easy read titles, and it's not designed to be.
Right.
It's designed to be a specific research on a specific group of people. Now, could I have done this on just men in general? Absolutely.
Sure.
But for whatever reason, I chose to do it on African American men.
I'm glad you did it, because the truth is getting that specific, as we used to call it, niching down into a specific category. I think you get better outcomes in the end. There's better information that's offered, and now it makes sense why we're having this conversation, because we know this comes up.
Absolutely.
And we know you're the guy for that. So I'm so glad to have that. I have something I want to ask you. I had
Sure.
a guy come in once.
Yeah.
And he said, it was an interesting point. He said, I can tell you right now, and this is like I've heard this from multiple men, but not just this one man.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say multiple is because I asked it of another male, and I asked it of another male, and I've asked it of another male.
Sure.
And I know we're talking just about men. This is not necessarily for women too, but because I think women have theirs.
Sure.
But in this case, for men, what ended up coming up was these 3 things. He said, there's only 3 things you have to do
Yeah.
to make it okay for me. And I said, okay, what's that? He goes, you got to feed me.
Okay.
He dropped the F-bomb, F me, right? You got to do me, right? So feed me, do me, and respect me.
Okay.
Because if those 3 things are present, buddy, I'm good. And I looked at him, I said, that's it. I said, that's the way through it with you. Like, as long as you have those 3 things, you're completely fine.
Yeah.
He said, yep, that's it. So I asked some other men that same question.
Mm-hmm.
I said, hey, I had this guy tell me this. What are your thoughts? And the guy looked at me and he goes, man, you know what? You're right. That would make it so simple if it was just like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then another guy said the same thing, and another guy said the same thing. So I'm going to ask you, for those 3 topics, you talked about your top 3 pleasures become the top 3 priorities.
Right.
But there's multiple men that have told me, if you feed me, you have sex with me, and you respect me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm good. I'm taken care of.
Yeah, that comes up for me in a session quite frequently.
Does it really?
It does, yeah. One of the major points of dissatisfaction, because one of the things that I've identified that help my clients in the therapeutic process is to identify the areas in which they're longing greater satisfaction.
Wow.
Right. And so one of the main areas that they struggle with satisfaction is sex and respect.
Those 2.
Those 2 areas. And, there are seasons where my clients come in where the respect issue is greater. And then there are seasons when they come in where the sex issue is greater.
Well, that just confuses the female, doesn't it?
Well, oftentimes it does, because her value on those 2 things are very different.
Oh,
Not that they're less, they're just different.
wow.
Right?
I'm glad you said that for them.
Right. And this is the thing, right? I'll give you this example, right? A couple came in, and it was actually a little flipped in the sense that emotionally he wanted more from his partner,
which is typically not the case.
Okay. Typically, she wants more emotionally.
Connecting emotionally.
Yes.
Yeah, I got it.
And he wanted more. Of course, he wanted sex, but he was not leading with sex. He was leading with spend more time. Notice that I am putting forth effort to be with you. I know that our schedules are jacked up, but I'm making some sacrifices
Yeah.
to see you, right? And her response to that was somewhat cold in the sense of, yeah, but we have all of this going on, and we have our daughter who needs me. And I know that our situation is not the way we want it to be, but we just grin and bear it. So you put a smile on your face and you act like you like it. And he was like, that won't work for me.
He told her.
That won't work for me.
Yeah.
And without him saying it.
Is this what you expected more from a male, though?
Not typically.
Not typically. Okay.
However, Michael, I will have to say that this phenomenon is growing.
This particular
phenomenon is growing.
Have you attributed that to anything?
Maybe.
I love how you go, I'm theorizing, I'm putting it together.
Yeah. You know.
But you see a trend.
I do see a trend. And what happened in that moment is that I was able to articulate with him, or get him to articulate, that it felt disrespectful for her to dismiss his desire.
Wow. Do you think females felt that at one point? Because you said it's a trend. You think females used to feel the disregard?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What would they call it? How would a female describe that?
So in the typical situation,
right,
again, had a client couple come in where she is feeling as if her needs are being dismissed. And she used the word, he's not validating my needs.
Yes, that's the word, validation.
Yeah. He's not validating, he's dismissing my opinions, right? And so, but nevertheless, my theory that is evolving, that is not a set theory as of yet, is with the movement and the rise of a sense of inclusivity, if you will.
Yes, sir.
Embracing the power and the role and the identity of the feminine presence, and dare I say, just women, right? And their role in the world, in society and culture. There has been a shifting of, hey, you know what? We're just as smart as men. We're just as able and capable as men. And in that process, something has been distorted, where there has been a shifting of the negative traits of men that has been picked up by women, and vice versa, instead of us exploring how to be more inclusive.
Oh, wow. We use that word as collaborative, right?
Right.
Yeah, with one another. So, well, let's get it. All that's super important. I think you and I could probably talk about that forever. I mean, we can get into a big topic. I'm sure we'd get a lot of feedback from both sides on that.
Sure.
But why? So sex with the ex, why is it happening?
Yeah. So primarily because it's comfortable and familiar.
That's it.
Primarily.
Yep.
I had one client who came in very, very distraught about the fact that her husband wanted a divorce. And she was like, no, I'm holding on to hope, even though he keeps telling me we're done, it's over. And she kept sleeping with him. Right. And one of the things that she said to me, and I asked her, I said, what keeps you sleeping with him when you know that he's telling you?
That's a powerful question.
That it's not.
Because something older there, yeah.
What's keeping you sleeping with him? And so she listed a number of things, right? One of the things that she listed as well, first of all, I still like sex. And I want to have sex. And she's a Christian woman. And morally, I can still have sex with him even though we're not divorced yet. Right.
But it met her value system.
Right. We're not divorced yet. I can still have sex with him. and I like having sex with him. I'm not thinking about any other person. I don't really want to be with any other person. And that was early on in the therapeutic process. Later on in the therapeutic process, she was more specific about him.
Sure. You think that in divorce, that there's typically one of the parties that's still in love with their spouse?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you think that happens more frequently than not? Do you think both people are usually in agreement, like they both think it's a good idea to split? Or do you think there's always one that says, if I could make it work, I would still want it to work?
I think that that scenario that you just described, that there's typically one, is probably close to 80%.
80? You don't think it's higher?
Possibly, but a solid 80.
I mean, 8 out of 10, that's still a high number.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe that's why this topic is so important, because if 80%, let's go with your number, if 80% of people that are divorcing still have a level of love or compassion or care for a person, and we typically fall into what's familiar and what's comfortable, yeah, sex is going to come up.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Either someone reaches out or has hopes or whatever else. And going back to something that Janan had once said is like, being honest is so important.
Yeah.
Do you find that to be with your ex? Do you think being honest with the ex and saying, look, I'm going to be honest with you, I still have love for you. Like I still would want us to reconcile if it was possible.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's a good thing to do in a situation like this? Or do you think would you tell them not to do that if you already know the other person's made up their mind?
It's never wrong to be honest.
Say that again.
It's never wrong to be honest.
To a therapist, to a court, to your ex.
Yeah. It's never wrong to be honest.
So
now let me say this though. Now let me say this. Just because something is true doesn't mean you have to say it.
So when would you dictate
right
to people when you should, hey, it's true, but I wouldn't encourage you to say it?
Right. Yeah. Does it help? Is the person open to hearing the truth? Right. And I'm not saying that I don't share this truth because you're not open. Right. But what I am saying is, hey, there's something that I like to point out to you. Are you willing to hear it?
100%.
Right. Because if you're not willing to hear it, then you'll take it as offense. And then that cultivates another problem.
I think that happens a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when I'm thinking about several cases here. I hate using the word cases.
Scenarios.
I'll use scenarios. Clients,
sure,
that I've had the privilege of serving, who were coming in for co-parenting, right? Because they're separated now, they're divorced, so they're coming to see me for co-parenting, but they're still sleeping with each other, right?
Wow.
And in this one case, it is obvious she has not minced words at all that I do not want this divorce. I want us to stay together.
She's been upfront about it.
She's been upfront about it. And he's saying, no, I don't trust you. This has all been very hurtful and very painful. I can't stand the emotional roller coaster that we're on when we're together. And each time that we're together, you do something to hurt me, whether it's physically or emotionally. No, I don't want to be with you. But you keep sleeping with her.
That was what you said.
Yeah, that's what I said to her. I said, but you keep sleeping with her.
Wow.
And so,
were you saying that as if it's like that you're wrong for doing this? You're saying this to her, but you're also wrong for...
Well,
I don't think that's ever the intention of a therapist, but...
No, so this is my theory about sex, is that it's supposed to be the celebration of the relationship.
I want people to hear that. Sex with your ex, okay? If sex is intended to be the celebration of your relationship and you're still engaging in sexual activity with your ex, what are you
celebrating? Right. And this is the thing, right? So, okay, so let me give you this caveat, right? I'm a believer. So I'm bringing my spirituality, I bring my context, my sense of doctrine, my understanding of, or my theology of God into the context, right? Everyone that I work with doesn't always have that perspective, right?
Right.
And oftentimes, many people look at religion, and let me say this: I'm not necessarily a proponent of religion as much as I am a proponent of relationship with God. And I think there's a difference. I think religion puts in our mind, we need to do these things to please God. But relationship with God is, this is an opportunity for me to get to know God.
The connection.
Right. It's a connection. And so I think the mistake that we make is that we think that God gives us these boundaries to keep us from something.
Sure.
When in all actuality, he gives us these boundaries to get us to something.
Oh. And maybe if having sex with my ex had a level of boundaries built in.
Absolutely.
Do you think that's important in that situation?
I think it's very important because
I think that the topic is, should it stop or should it not?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So give me more of that.
Yeah. So let's just go back to some of the things that we learned in sexuality and counseling on sexual issues.
Right.
All right. One of the things that we learned about sex is that there are some key elements that should be in place for healthy sexual expression. All right. One is consent, mutual consent. Mutual consent.
Mutual consent.
Mutual consent.
Okay. Do you think we need to let it go, though? Do you think that having sex with your ex should stop or needs to stop, or does it need boundaries? What do the listeners need to understand about that?
Well, let's go back to the elements, right, that we were talking about. So there's consent, right? Secondly, you have to feel safe.
Consent, safe. Okay.
Right. You have to feel safe.
What do you mean by safe, though?
Right. So emotionally safe.
Emotional.
Physically safe, right? Mentally safe, with this person. Because think about it, sex is a very vulnerable act. It's probably one of the most vulnerable things that we do, right? So if I can use my spiritual context, all right,
please.
And we go back to Scripture, the King James version of Scripture,
okay,
and we look at Genesis. And in the Bible, it says, and Adam knew his wife Eve, and she conceived a son and called his name Cain, right? So what that lets us know is that when the Bible uses that word, and Adam knew, what that suggests is that Adam had sex with his wife, right? So let's kind of unpack that a little bit. The problem is that we're having sex with people we don't know.
Not with our ex. Our ex would be someone we would know.
Well, in this context.
Oh, culturally, there's no doubt.
Right. Well, but in this context, I would venture to argue that we don't know our ex anymore.
Ooh.
Because we have decided to separate from this person.
Wow.
That we loved. And so when we decided to separate and call this person our ex, we left the covenant. Right?
Okay.
All right. And so sex is one of those things that's supposed to happen in covenant. So I don't know you anymore, but I'm still having sex with you. And at the end of the day, I'm not supposed to know everybody.
So is the sex with your ex is more of a physical thing, you think? Or maybe for one it's physical, the other maybe not? I don't know.
Well, so you're right? So the one client who was devastated about her divorce and was still sleeping with her husband,
right.
It was more than a physical thing for her. It was a hope that they were going to get back together. So
some people use the sex as something meaningful.
Absolutely. And it should be something meaningful. It should be the celebration of the relationship. Sensuality is not sexuality. Sexuality is sensual.
Ooh, hold on. I want people to make sure they heard that. Say that one more time.
Sensuality is not sexuality. Sexuality is sensual.
Got it.
All right. And so what I mean by that is that sensually is affection. It's a passion. It's something that happens in an experience that is cultivated where you have this clear understanding that I love, I respect this person. I have a deep desire, a deep connection with this person. Mm-hmm. And this is beautiful. And that is cultivated first, or should be cultivated first.
Right.
And when we have sex, it becomes very beautiful and wonderful, right? And part of the reason why many of us are not experiencing healthy sexual expression is because we're skipping the sensual part and just jumping to the physical,
Yep.
Mechanical part of sex.
You probably heard that in couples counseling. Yeah.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
it's probably happening with people separated, people together.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the benefit of having healthy boundaries for a
Right.
second. What is the benefit of having healthy boundaries when it comes to sex with your ex?
Right. The benefit of having healthy boundaries is you gain clarity.
Okay.
You're not muddled with unreasonable expectations.
Right.
Right. You're not muddled with these thoughts and ideas of are we going to get back together or not? And a person, and I'm emphasis on person because it could be the man or it could be the woman.
Sure.
But a person can come into context and say, I have a clear understanding that this is just sex, whatever that means, right? This is
It's all
just
defined,
sex,
yeah.
right? I don't need to get attached. I don't need to build my hopes.
Mm-hmm.
But if her hope is there, or if his hope is there, it doesn't change anything. So let me give you another example, right, of another client. He broke up with the young lady because he was, in his words, she's crazy. I said, okay, but you're still having sex with her. I am. All right. And then she ends up getting pregnant.
Wow.
Right. After they broken up.
Oh, wow.
Right. And I said to him, I said, what kept you going back? He said, honestly, it was good.
The sex?
Yeah. Of course, those were not the words that he used, but, for the sake of the podcast.
Yeah. That's what I've heard too, though. Sex with the ex. That's what they're telling me also is, hey, the sex is good. The sex is good. That's good. About the only thing they tell me about why they're going back.
Why they're going back. It's because it's good. And this is the other thing. He said she's crazy.
Yeah.
Right. And so I have heard this over and over and over again. The crazier the person, the better the sex. Have you heard that?
I have.
Yeah. I'm just like, okay.
I've not tested it, and I don't think I'm intending to.
Well, I'm happily married 20 years.
Me too.
I think I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah. I'm very satisfied.
But I'm happy to say, as a therapist, it doesn't mean that I'm not interested in going, help me understand the pattern.
Right.
So that I can help create or navigate things with you as a clinician.
Right.
To get to a better place. So let's do this again. We have some benefits. You mentioned clarity is one of the benefits of having healthy boundaries. What other benefits do people get from having healthy boundaries?
They learn more about themselves.
Really?
Yeah. So this is the thing, right? When he said the sex is good, my question was, well, what made it good? You were able to actually explore more about himself. Right. Because at the end of the day, good is an opinion. What you may call good, I may not.
Oh yeah, it can be a different definition for sure.
Like so a vegan could see some broccoli and be like, oh, I love that broccoli. I want to see, I want that those carrots, and my son, you bring him in here and put some broccoli and carrots in front of him, it's like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Right. So now I'm exploring with him about what is motivating him to do the thing that he says that he doesn't want to do, which is be in relationship with her.
Wow. That's a phenomenal benefit.
Yeah.
You get more depth of self when you have good, clear boundaries. So clarity, learning more about yourself. Any other things you can think of?
Yeah. One other thing that I want to share about the benefit of boundaries is that it frees you to pursue your best hope. People see boundaries as restrictions. No, I want you to see this boundary as a freedom.
Well, and sometimes the boundary is necessary to get, it's almost like the vehicle that gets you where you're headed.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Okay. So let's do this. Just to recap here, I'm going to go over a couple of sections and I want you to give me kind of maybe one key takeaway from each one. So going back to, why is sex with my ex happening and how is it impacting divorce? What would you like listeners to remember?
I would like for them to remember that it happens just because it's familiar.
Okay.
Right? Somebody that you at least knew at one point. Notice I said you probably don't know your ex anymore, but you knew them at one point.
Right.
And so it's familiar. Something that's familiar doesn't necessarily mean that you know it. It's just familiar.
There you go. Got it.
And so, and how does it impact divorce is that it confuses the divorce process.
Yeah, it creates a lot of confusion. I've learned.
Either you're going to be together or not.
And can you imagine the kids, if they even knew the parents were hooking up, what they would be like, what are we doing?
And a lot of the kids know. A lot of the kids.
Wow. Yeah.
You know.
That might be a topic in itself, is just going, do kids know that I'm sleeping with my ex? We're going to go and tell you, yeah, they probably do.
And at the end of the day, kids know more than you realize they know.
100%.
You try to keep things away from them. The more you try to keep it away, the more that they know, because kids are curious.
That's probably why they know so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point. So in the next one, should it stop? Should it not? Do we need to let it go?
Yeah.
What are key things that you want people to remember about that?
Right. So while I have my own therapeutic recommendations around this, the main thing that I want the audience to know is just to be aware of the trappings of being sexually active. Really, I know that this topic is about sex with my ex, but in sex in general, just making poor choices of who your sexual partners are with, right?
So becoming aware,
right?
Being aware.
And so I would venture to say that if y'all decided to break up, y'all probably need to decide to not sleep with each other.
There you go. Okay. Remember that. In exploring the benefit of healthy boundaries, when we talk about that, what do you want people to remember?
The main thing that I want people to know, that these boundaries are for you. They're to help set you free.
They're not to keep someone away.
Right.
They're there
so that you can move on and discover your best hopes.
Got it. That's what I have. Clarity. Learn more about yourself and pursue the pursuit of your best hope.
Absolutely.
Dr. Robinson, this was a lot.
Yeah.
I think people may have to re-listen to the episode to get everything out of this. It's one of those, you get a good movie, you got to go back and rewatch it like 5 times and you still miss stuff.
Yeah.
I think I might have to go back and just re-listen to this whole thing, just because there's so much that you offered. And I love that you brought in a perspective of your faith, a perspective of your therapeutic intervention, and using an example. And I love that you continue to use that one particular case where you were serving and you were talking about how it was impacting, and then kind of tying it in. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here for that.
Absolutely.
So everyone, thank you again for the listeners that were here on the podcast. Dr. Robinson is just a treat to listen to. He's got so much great information. It will not hurt our feelings if you have to go back and re-listen. Actually, if you do go back and re-listen, I'd like to know so that we can make sure we're capturing the best information for you and continue to produce the best topics that help you navigate the divorce process. So please follow us on Instagram. Again, that is at Brighter Possibilities FC, at Brighter Possibilities, F as in family, C as in counseling. If it's on Facebook, we're at Brighter Possibilities Family Counseling. On Facebook, again, Brighter Possibilities Family Counseling. We're so honored to have you here. Thank you so much for all of you. Thank you for the comments and the likes and, of course, the shares. The more people we can get this information out to, the more we can be helpful. So thank you again for all that. Dr. Robinson, again, thank you for being here.
Absolutely, Michael. Glad to be here.
Thanks
for having me.
Keep moving forward.